Hello and welcome to another tutorial from CamiPaige Boutique. I am Brooke Tannehill, and today I'm bringing you a more somber tutorial that is dedicated to the breast cancer awareness in those who are affected by the disease. This cup was a custom order from a coworker as a gift to her good friend who had just completed her last round of chemo and is well on her way to kicking cancer's butt. As always, all the products I use will be listed below in the description, and you may even find a coupon code or two that saves you some coin. Also, we just launched our brand new Facebook group, so check the link below and take advantage of a bunch of upcoming freebies and giveaways that you aren't going to want to miss. So, without further hesitation, let's go ahead and get started. This customer requested a 30-ounce skinny straight, so this is the box that cup comes in. And one of the little hacks that I do is I like to write the name of the cup / like the design on the outside of the box so it's easier to keep track of. Then I just put the bubble wrap and the lid inside so that it's squared away and I know how to find it when it's time to package up the cup. I then grab my 80 grit sanding block and I just make sure to sand the cup, not lightly, but enough to get that topmost film off, and so that we have a nice scuffed surface for the acrylic paint to adhere to. So for this design, which is a little bit different than the other cups that we had done, I'm going to be using acrylic paint to apply the base layer for the glitter that we will be applying to this cup. Once you have a nicely scuffed surface, come in with alcohol. I use 91% alcohol, and use just kind of a shop towel or coffee filter to get any of the grit off so that you have a nice clean surface to move into the next step. Once you have a clean cup, I go ahead and grab my tape measure and I measure the height of the cup, and then I also measure the width of the two different tape options that I have here. So from dividing the height of the cup by the width, I went with the 2-inch tape because it was going to give me the most evenly distributed stripes down the cup, and they would all be a pretty similar, I would say, height, I guess is the best way to put it, so that the design looked cohesive. Once you have the tape size picked out that you want to use, I use the top rim of the cup to start my first layer or stripe, as you can say, of the tape. I like it because it gives me a really nice straight guide to reference for applying my tape that sets up the rest of the stripes for success. So right there, what you see is I'm cutting the painter's tape just a little bit longer and folding it into a triangle so it's easier to remove as I go on down the cup. So here, what I'm doing is I know I just wanted to leave the slightest little sliver of stainless steel between the two stripes of tape. And what I'm doing is I'm eyeballing and using that first stripe as reference so that I can make sure that I'm getting as straight of stripes, that's a mouthful, as possible, because that is going to impact the overall paint and where everything goes for the rest of the cup. So I would highly recommend taking your time on this step. Even if you take your time, it really doesn't take that long. And you can see here, what I like to do is I like to get a lot of runway, so to say, with the tape, hold it taut so that the tape isn't drooping or has any extra slack in it, and just roll the cup. That way I can guide the cup to get me as straight of lines as possible, and you can see how fast this process really does go if you use this kind of method for applying your tape. I didn't tape this bottom section because I knew it was pretty close to the width of the other stripes, and since I had planned out my stripes, I knew it would just be white, so I just went ahead and left it. I then grabbed my white paint that I just bought from Michael's. It's nothing spectacular. And I grabbed also about a 1-inch flat brush and started to paint the bottom of my cup. So this is acrylic paint, and if you guys haven't used it before, you need to make sure that you're applying the paint as evenly as possible, because if you have any goopy spots or if you have streaks that aren't completely painted, you do run the chance of it showing through with your glitter. So take your time. Also know that your first coat of acrylic paint will not be perfect. So go into this knowing that you're going to have to do multiple coats to get a really great coverage. However, I found that acrylic paint is easier to use than spray paint, depending on how many stripes you have and how intricate your design is. So if you're more comfortable with spray paint, by all means use spray paint. I just opted to use acrylic paint since I was just using 2 colors for my stripes. I then remove the tape for the middle section and apply the paint just the way I did to the bottom. I know it's sped up, but taking your time, making sure that you're getting good coverage, but even coverage before you move into the next section. and knowing that this is going to be the first coat. So as soon as that's coated, I move on to the top section, which I will do in just a second, and just do the same thing again. So I just opted for a 5-stripe cup. Now you could definitely do more, as I said before, but this is kind of the design that I was wanting so that I could give more focus on the big decal that we'll be adding later on. So then coats, then I dry it with my heat gun because I'm impatient, and then make sure that, now when you use your heat gun, and just make sure that you're not overheating the acrylic paint because you can get it bubbled, you can torch it and burn it. So just be careful when using your heat gun, but it is a great hack to get your acrylic paint to dry faster. So here I'm just doing another even coat of the white acrylic paint to get that great coverage for when we add our beautiful glitter here in a minute. And just like that, in true movie magic form, it is time to apply the glitter. So for this cup, I decided to do half acrylic paint and half Mod Podge. Now, you're probably wondering, okay, Brooke, this is a white cup. Why are you applying white paint to Mod Podge that's already white? And I'll tell you why. I have found that if I apply acrylic paint to Mod Podge, it gives me a little bit longer working time. And that's important when you're doing large spaces like this with the Mod Podge, because it allows you to have a little bit longer work time when applying your glitter so that you can work in I would say just a little bit bigger sections. So you're not having to constantly go back and forth over and over again. So here, what I'm doing is I'm trying to stay within the paint lines as much as possible, and then just applying the Mod Podge and acrylic mixture as evenly as possible. So that's another key point. You want this as even as possible because otherwise it will show through the glitter. And I apply my favorite white glitter right now, which is Dazzle from Glitter Heart Company. So I do 2 coats of the glitter that you'll see here in a minute, but just making sure I have great coverage, that I don't have any bare spots, and I'm tapping the glitter into the mixture just to make sure it's nice and in place, and I have as minimal movement as possible. I continue this process for the other stripes, and then I let that dry for probably a good 3 to 4 hours, and then I moved into a second coat. For the second coat, I didn't use acrylic paint to apply the glitter. I just used straight Mod Podge, so that way I wouldn't take away from any of the sparkly beautifulness of Dazzle underneath. But it did need a good 2 coats to really give it all of that glittery goodness. I let those stripes dry after the second coat for a good 3 to 4 hours, and then it was time to move into the pink sections of this cup. Now, I will tell you that I accidentally did not video the second glitter color that I applied over the top of these stripes. So I'm still going to show you the process that I followed. However, I did do 2 pink glitter colors. One is Razorita that I'll show you in a minute. And then I also did pink Moscato glitter over the top of that. And I will get into that in a second, but I wanted to make sure to call it out before we get into the pink stripes. Now again, this is a lot of the same from what we did with the white. However, you are going to want to take your time to make sure that you're butting the flat brush. And now again, this is why I choose the flat brush instead of like an angled brush, but please by all means use whatever you're comfortable with. But I take my time getting that brush up as close to the white as possible and getting nice even coats on the stripes. This is super important, just like with the white stripes, but you are going to take your time, and so it's going to take a little bit longer, but you only have 2 stripes here. So even coats, this is just, I believe it's just like a pink from the Craft Smart acrylic paint. You can obviously use any color that you like, but I'm just taking my time, making sure to get the paint up as close to the white as possible, and then using my trusty heat gun to dry the paint, because this will also need 2 coats to get that nice base layer for the glitter. For the pink glitter, we're going to be applying it the same way that we did with the white, and we'll be using Razorita for the first glitter on the pink stripes. So what I do here is I grab some of that pink paint that we use, and I'm going to add Mod Podge directly into the paint there. And I used about 1-to-1 ratio, so equal parts, and then mixed it together with my paintbrush. Nothing too scientific, but it did lighten the pink paint a little bit, but it's nothing to worry about. I then used the same paintbrush to apply this mixture to the cup, working in some smaller sections to apply the glitter. So one of the things you want to make sure is if you are using a finer cut like Razzarita, which we are for this first layer of glitter, you need to make sure not to have any streaks and that the Mod Podge acrylic paint mixture is as even as possible. The reason for that is that these finer cuts of glitter will show everything. Sometimes even if you have 2 or 3 coats of glitter. So you have to make sure that you have it as even as possible. This is also one of the reasons why I use a flat tip paintbrush, because I can push the acrylic Mod Podge mixture into those lines easier and get more of that even coverage, because you can't do the whole stripe at once because you'll have sections that dry and then you won't have any glitter in those spots. So I continue this method for the rest of the stripes, and here one thing I will note is do not do what I'm doing. Make sure that the glitter dries, the pink glitter dries before getting a chip brush to wipe it off. I actually messed up one of my stripes by trying to do this too quick into the process. The glitter that's in the white doesn't have any glue on it, so it's not going to stick to the white. So just be patient and wipe it off once everything's dry, because I actually messed up one of my, well, I would almost say 2 spots of my stripes because I was too impatient and tried to wipe the glitter off too quickly. I let this dry for a good 3 to 4 hours, and then I came in with the pink Moscato lighter and followed the exact same process. So nothing that you haven't seen previously in this tutorial, but I did make sure to dry it before we moved into epoxy. I sealed this cup twice with clear gloss spray paint from Rust-Oleum, made sure that was dry for about a good hour, and then I mixed up 35 milliliters of a little extra ink epoxy. And the reason why I mixed up 35 is because I have found when you use the Mod Podge method of applying glitter, I usually need a little extra epoxy to cover the whole cup and get a nice even coat. So I'm just taking my time, making sure that I'm getting the bottom. And I also like to apply my glitter, even though it's sealed and I don't have a lot of movement, but stripe by stripe, just so if there is some stray glitter, it stays in place as much as possible and you don't have any of that cross-contamination. It's really easy to see if you have any contamination when you have white glitter. So this is just a little extra caution that I take, or precaution that I take, so that the stripes stay as true as possible and you really keep those glitters separate. I then torched the cup in case there were any micro bubbles, and to have a completely smooth surface to move into the next step, this cup did require a second layer of epoxy to go into the next process of striping the cup. Just with a couple of my last tutorials, I have done a portion of this cup live, so that is what you're seeing here. And what I wanted to make sure to do is after I did the 2 layers of epoxy, that I take my sanding block and knock down any high spots of glitter or any rough spots that would prevent my vinyl from laying smoothly down on the cup. This is a really important step because I'm going to be using a yellow holographic vinyl that you'll see right there. I know it looks pink, but I promise it's yellow. And any holographic vinyl shows any imperfections, any uneven surfaces, so you want to make sure that your cup is as smooth as possible. So again, this is the yellow holographic vinyl, and I will definitely link this below, that I chose to lay down first for the stripes. I cut these stripes, and granted, I cut 6 of them, even though I won't need all of them, just to have extras, because with any kind of vinyl application, mistakes happen, so I wanted to have extras on hand. And I cut this 1/4 of an inch wide. So if you go into Cricut, I set it to 0.25 inches wide, and I cut this 11 inches long, and it was plenty of vinyl to get all the way around the cup, and it even let me some excess. But I apply the vinyl in the very same fashion that I did the painter's tape. I get a part of the tape connected to the cup, but then I hold it back and I use the motion of rolling the cup to get as straight of lines as possible. eyeballing it and making sure that it ends up as straight and aligned as possible. So again, when you're lining up the vinyl, you want to make sure that you have half of the vinyl on the pink and half the vinyl on the white so that you have same widths of the stripe. Otherwise, you're going to notice a visible difference from the top stripe to the bottom stripe. So the next vinyl I chose to use over the top of the yellow holographic is just Peak Oracal 631. So this is just a removable vinyl that I had. I love the color, and I think it complemented the entire color scheme really well. And I cut these 1/8 of an inch wide, or 0.125 inches wide and 11 inches tall, to make sure that I had even sides of the yellow holographic vinyl on both sides of the pink stripe. So I hope that makes sense. So I laid the pink in the middle of the yellow holographic, and I had even distribution on both sides because of the different widths that I chose for the vinyl striping. So using the same technique that I did with the holographic and the painter's tape, getting a long kind of taut line of the vinyl going, and then rolling the cup to make sure that it goes on as smooth, evenly, and straight as possible. One thing I forgot to mention is that you are going to want to have a very, very sharp X-Acto knife handy. So that way, when you get your vinyl all the way around the cup and you have the two ends meeting, you can simply push down your X-Acto knife and you'll have a nice straight line and a minimal seam that not a lot of people are even going to notice, let alone see. Also, I don't want you to think I got this done at the first try. I had to remove a couple of the stripes to get them perfectly aligned. So take your time. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, and that's why I always cut extra strips, so that way I can just pull them off if I need to and then reapply them as necessary. One thing I did learn is that the 631 is a little stretchier than the holographic, so you don't want to pull on it as tight as you can with the yellow holographic, because it gets stretched out and it doesn't hold its straight lines that you want for these perfect stripes. Once the stripes were done, I wanted to make sure to seal them so that we didn't have any lifting, especially because we were using two different vinyls. So I sealed them with Quick Coat from CC DIY. Then I mixed up, I believe, 25 milliliters of a little extra ink epoxy and applied them to the cup to make sure that the stripes were nice and secure to the cup before we came in and applied the decal. This is super important because the last thing that you want is for when you go to apply your decal that the stripes are underneath it, and then you have little ridges that don't give you that smooth look of applying, like, that you want with your decal, and it just looks like you kind of half-assed it, so to say. I don't know if I'm supposed to say half-assed, but I apologize. So take the extra time by applying the coat of epoxy between the stripes and the decal, and I promise you're going to thank me. I let that cure for about 6 hours. I just kind of left it overnight, but it was ready to go after 6 hours. And then I cut my pink breast cancer ribbon using the same vinyl that I used on the stripes. This file will be available in the CamiPaige Boutique VIP group, so definitely join if you're interested in getting this free file. I'm not going to charge you anything. But what I wanted to make sure to do is make the decal big enough that it made an impact. So I measured my cup to see how big I wanted to make it, and I applied it to my cup. Now, with this decal, there's a couple of things. You are going to want to roll it onto the cup. So just like I'm doing this here, because it is so big. So in a couple of ways, it almost is like a little bit of a vinyl wrap, because this decal almost goes all the way around. But you also want to pay attention to the placement. And I thought about this afterwards, so I wanted to share this with you guys. This decal is so tall that you could easily cover up all of the stripe seams that you have from when you went ahead and applied your stripes. So you can literally lay this decal over the top of the stripes and cover those seams so that nobody's going to see them. So take your time applying the decal. And I actually applied the lady's name this is for. Her name was Crystal, and I can list the font that I used to cut her name out. And I just applied it to the base of that ribbon. So it's big enough spot just for a little name, and I thought it was a really nice decal and detail. And then I sealed this again with CC DIY. Then it was time for the final coat of epoxy. So since we sealed the decal and everything else was nice and smooth, this only needed one coat to finish the cup off. So I mixed up 25 milliliters again of a little extra ink epoxy and just made sure to apply a nice even coat so that we got great coverage and got to see that amazing ALE shine. I haven't really spoken much about a little extra ink epoxy on my last couple of tutorials, but I cannot begin to express how much I love this epoxy. I almost gave up making cups because of such bad experience I had with other brands, but I highly recommend that you guys give them a shot because I don't think that you're gonna wanna use anything else. So this is a little extra ink epoxy, highly recommend them, and I will definitely list them below in the description so you guys can take a look if you're interested. I let this cup dry for about 4 to 6 hours and she was done. I feel like this tumbler came out absolutely beautiful. The colors, the glitter, and the pink ribbon that helps to bring awareness to the efforts underway to cure this disease. I hope this cup is a great present to symbolize crystals making it through chemo and kicking cancer's butt. As always, thank you so much for watching. It means so much to me. If you like this tutorial, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you can see future videos. You can also ring the bell so you are notified for all future cup making goodies. Thank you again. Love you guys. Bye.